Hello, everybody. We have Savannah here today, and I'm giving a shout out. When I was first released from incarceration, I didn't know what I was going to do concerning getting medical attention. And Nurse Savannah, that's how I had her on my contact, Nurse Savannah. But I found out that Nurse Savannah wasn't just a good nurse, and she helped me get the attention that I needed. But what was close to my heart, my mother raised me. I'm an only child. And when I found out that Savannah had a relative behind walls, I thought that this interview would be perfect. How are you doing today, Savannah?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Can you talk to me from your aspect about the relationship that you have with your son, how it has been affected by incarceration? Because for my mother, and I'm only speaking from my experience, my mother went at least 10 years of just going to work and coming home while I was incarcerated. She did not end in that condition. And I spent over 27 years of incarceration. And so she did do some good things while I was incarcerated. But when I found out when she visited me that all she did was go to work and come home, and I said, Mama, why did you do that? Her statement was, I'm not going to do anything till you come home. So she had literally, and I know you're not doing that, but she had literally put her life on hold for me. And that's how I affected my mother during my incarceration.
Right. So, first, just to clarify, because I always get that question like, oh my God, like you have, so first of all, my son is 31, right? And everybody always questions, like, how do you have a son that age, right? But I was married for 15 years, and along with my marriage came children, right? Stepchildren. So we had a blended family. And my son at the time was 7 years old. And so he is my bonus child in that he's not my biological child. However, he is my son. And that's how I refer to him. He calls me his mom, and that's what it is. But I also have two brothers who are incarcerated, and I'm a child of a mother who is incarcerated for a short period of time in CDCJ. But my son was incarcerated at age 17. And I think my situation is unique because I'm not his biological mother, a lot of times that presented with challenges, right? Because I was married to his father, and as long as I was married to him, I had total access, right? I was able to visit him as his mother. He referred to me as his mother. I could call and get any of the information that I wanted, even as a stepmother. However, once I got divorced, then now I'm listed as a friend. So that in and of itself has presented a lot of barriers because we're not able to have contact visits anymore. We're not able to really, it's difficult to even get information about him before I was added to his PHI form. But he was incarcerated at age 17, and he's now 31. He's been to several units. He went through his phase. He's growing up in prison, right? And so, me understanding, having family members who've kind of cycled in and out of the system, I'm trying to help him as best as I can learn and adapt in a positive way in such what I call a hostile environment, right? Because it's just like out here, what we don't provide to our children, they're going to get it from somewhere else, right? So how can I still be an influence, a positive influence to him, even in his conditions of confinement, right? And so, that's been presented with many challenges. He has gotten his GED. And he's working toward like carpentry and studying for construction. But it's been presented with some challenges. He's, battling mental health. And again, just growing up, transitioning through, GED, transitioning through from teenage or boy to man, right? And that looks different for everybody, especially people who are struggling with their relationship with religion, right? And struggling with relationships with their family on the outside. I mean, you mentioned your mother pretty much putting her life on hold, and everybody does it different. There are some aspects of my life I feel like that are on hold, because I feel like his life is literally in a plastic folder. Like before he left, he got his first paycheck. I have his check stub. I got his birth certificate. I have his ID, his first ID that he got before he was incarcerated. So in some ways, even though, we've got to move on, I think every family member struggles with how they're going to move on and still keep their loved one relevant and keep them present in conversations and in their everyday life. And I don't think that there's anybody who doesn't have that struggle, right? You can communicate with the person every day, but like, as I said, my son went in when he was 17. Now, if he makes parole when he's 38, he's going to be a grown man. I have no idea what type of man he's going to be when he comes out. I can honestly say that. And if anybody says that they know, they're not being truthful. You don't know what you're going to receive when your loved one gets out. But in supporting them, and honestly, just in your prayer and your thoughts, you just hope that everything that you've sown into this person is going to manifest itself on the other side of these walls.
Thank you. Well, before I get into some things that family members can do to not only stay engaged in that relationship, I want to put you ahead of that because you wear so many hats. You're a nurse, you have an organization. If I know you're involved with more than one organization, but when I look at you on this afternoon, my thoughts are you as an individual, you as Savannah. And I want to make sure I'm really clear and concise because you have to be a consummate professional, dealing with the lawmakers that you deal with, dealing with the patients that you deal with. But I also know that you're a person. And I can say that you speak to me as a person, but I'm asking you as a person, what are you going through in your relationship with your incarcerated loved ones? Not the business aspect, not I have to make sure that they're doing right. And no. Just you as an individual, what are you experiencing that you're just comfortable sharing? Because I think that's missed so many times. When I was incarcerated, I used to tell my peers all the time, I said, bro, it's sort of messed up our relationships with people. And they'd be like, what do you mean? I said, because we're so needy, because in Texas, we're not paid to work. So here's the bottom line. We need support from the outside. Don't want to get into all the logistics, but I would also say, look at the chaplain, look at the warden. Anytime they walk around the unit, there's so many needs. And I would always tell the chaplain and I tell the warden, I said, listen, I need you to keep something in mind. They're like, what, Oliver? I said, don't become hardened because everybody is asking you for something, because I need you to understand you are the answer to so many problems that are here in prison. No, you don't have the answer to every problem, but you have the answer to most. And I know when I'm looking at you, the thoughts that are on my heart, you have the help, you have the support that everybody wants. But what about you?
That's actually a good question. And again, like, I think a lot of family members struggle with self-care, right? Because there's a thought sometimes that because we know that our loved ones are in a position where they need us, it feels sometimes selfish when we choose to do things for ourselves first, right? And it could be something small, right? It could be, getting your nails done. It could be, taking time out for yourself where you just do not answer the phone. Like, I'm going to be very forthcoming. Like, I have 3 phones. At any given time, my phone is ringing like every 10 minutes if I don't turn it off, right? However, there's also that level of guilt sometimes that if I turn my phone off and I miss a phone call from my son, or I miss a phone call from my brother or whoever, that there could be some real consequences because it could have been an emergency, right? And that actually happened last year when we were going through COVID. My son was in ADSAG and he called. I missed his call. I didn't hear from him again for months. So I was very like upset. I was disheartened because, I had no idea. And he was at a unit where it was taking anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get a letter. So by the time I actually found out what was going on with him, I found out that he had an issue, like a mental health crisis, and had to be transferred for treatment. So it's an example of, what we go through, like just the not knowing, right? And then I think on the other aspect of that is knowing how to communicate and share with people who are on the inside. Because I'm of the mind that there are just some things that I do not want to know, right? Because I know that I will be compelled not only to try to act, but I would actually kind of take on some of those feelings, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing some of the things that my loved ones have to endure. So we don't have conversations about certain things. My son, a lot of times if I'm having a bad day, I'm careful about how I communicate that, because I don't want to project that negative energy on them on the inside, where they're in a situation where they feel like they can't help me or they can't assist me, and then kind of throwing guilt on them. Or so I'm very careful about that. And in the same token, like I went through a healthcare situation a couple of actually earlier in the year, and I didn't tell my brother that I was in the hospital. I didn't tell my son because I couldn't get them the information in time. By the time they found out, I was already out, and they were upset. They were upset. I wasn't going to tell them anyway, because I feel like, I did not want them to worry. But those are the types of things, that we do. It's beyond the financials, right? Because I feel like I'm blessed to be able to support my loved ones in a way that, they're able to be okay. But I also do not want them comfortable and complacent with where they are. I want them to have what they need, but I don't ever want them to be comfortable with being in there to the point that, they know I'm going to take care of them. So, I don't want this to be a recurring thing, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And so, yes, I take care of my loved ones the same way that I would out here. But, at the same time, I want them to know that, it's a needs more than a want, right? I know they need, so I'm here to support and give it to them, because I know and I expect that they would do the same for me, right? As somebody that they love. And as a condition of that love, that I support them, maybe not necessarily in their actions, but I support them in our relationship, whatever that looks like.
Okay. Well, when is the last time you knew definitively, without a doubt, that your supporting them was appreciated?
So it's actually great that you asked that. So it doesn't happen often. And I think sometimes it's just we get caught in the melee. But my son just wrote me last week, and in the letter, he thanked me for just sticking by him. And specifically because, I didn't give birth to him. He always makes it a point to say that, like, I know you don't have to do this, even though I don't look at it like that, right? I don't look at it like, oh, he's not my son and this is conditional. But he was very thankful in the letter and thanked me for, being there for him. He thanked me for the work that I do out here. And my brothers also, like, they're very thankful and very appreciative. But I don't even think about it. It's just, it's something you do without thought.
I believe you that you don't think about it. And there's a reason I'm going with this line of questioning. What did it do for you when they demonstrated appreciation for whatever you did? What did that do for you?
So it empowered me, right? It uplifted me. It rejuvenated me, as I'm sure it would do anybody else. And, you can't tell people, right? Because it's different. It would look different if I said, you got to tell me thank you. I do all this stuff. Yeah, so everything. I don't expect that. But yes, of course, it would rejuvenate. It would just, reignite the fight in you. And honestly, that's what I hope to do for other people. It's just, empower them to want to, know that they have support and sticking by their loved ones. Because I say it all the time that family members are the first responders in this movement, right? And they need support. They need support to support their loved ones because it's hard. It's very hard.
What comes to my mind, because I am uniquely qualified to say what I'm about to say. I know that you are appreciated because no, I don't know your brothers. I don't know your son, but I've known so many men, and the Bible tells me that basically we're more alike as individuals than unique. Though there is a uniqueness as men, women, we're more alike. And so just you not only financially supporting them, but I'm not even going to focus on that. I'm telling you that during my time, people who just believed in me, who just were available to me. And when I say available to me, to know that if I wrote or if I called, they not only saw me and they heard me. And even though they might not have been able to solve one problem for me that I may have been facing during incarceration, just having those individuals available to me created a very soft and loving heart in me. And obviously, I had discussions with numerous men. And so I'm not only saying thank you, but I'm also speaking because when I was released, you haven't just helped me, you've helped others. And I think that it's important that you experience the joy of not just being told thank you, but just realizing that there are individuals who you did do something for, that even though they may not have said it, because life has a way of, when I was incarcerated, I shared, bro, if you don't say thank you, life has a way of, before you're able to say thank you, you have your hand out again. I'm not even speaking about a greedy person. I'm just saying, if you're not careful and if you are not intentional in relating to your wife, to your sister, to your mama, to your dad, to your aunts, to your uncles, to your grandparents, to your friends, then there's going to be another issue. And so I'm saying thank you to you. And I know that a lot of people are thankful. And though they might not say it all the time, you have a good name. And in your relationship, with numerous individuals who have been released, your professionalism, your consistency, your effectiveness is not only recognized, but you're appreciated. So just wanted to make sure that that's stated, because that's super important to me. One thing that I committed myself to, I said, hey, when other people aren't able to be seen and heard, I want to make sure that if I'm standing before people or standing in the midst of people, I make sure to do exactly what I'm doing with you, to say, hey, it matters what you do, not to give you a rah-rah speech, but just to say sometimes people just get caught up in their own little world. But I was one of those people who you helped. And so having spoken to different people who you've helped and knowing the type of men your son and your brothers are, just know that. Okay. If,
Appreciate you, Sean.
okay. If someone was watching this and they have a relative who's incarcerated, and not so much what the system has going on the inside, that's the next interview. From an emotional and relational aspect, what could you share that you've learned that will help them navigate their relationships with their loved ones? Because, see, one thing I found, you can have a person on the outside of incarceration who gives everything financially, everything legally, and that can be meaningful to individuals. And you can also have an individual who does not have that much to give other than some prayer, a letter occasionally, but they're consistent throughout that individual's incarceration. I'm just letting you know from the other side of the wall that that individual, that esteem and that difference that is made by that consistency will far outweigh the financial and legal help. Yes, financial and legal help is needed, but the reason I'm asking you for the relational counsel is because that's what'll hold. Because in the midst of all the appeal is possible, or I got in trouble, or COVID, or the treatment is bad, if I know that I have someone who loves me, and it might sound emotional to somebody, but I'm telling you, having been on the other side, if I know somebody loves me and cares about me, that oftentimes is enough, because the other stuff is not guaranteed.
Right.
But that
Um,
love, it is.
I totally agree. So just understand that, like, I say now that, like, I'm in a position right now that I'm able to assist, like, and support my loved ones, but that hasn't always been the case, right? That hasn't always been the case. My son's been gone 13 years. I mean, I've changed a lot in 13 years. A lot has changed in my life in 13 years. We've grown together. We've aged together. We've rejoiced together and we've gone through trials and tribulations, but at any point in time, I've always known where to find him. And I know people say, he's incarcerated. Of course, you know where to find him. That's not always the case. I know where he's at. I know what unit he's on. I know what pod he's in. I know where to find him. I know who to call if there's any issues. I know the policy because I'm learning how best to help him. And I think sometimes we forget, like, from a community standpoint, it's two separate communities, right? The best way that I can assist my loved one is knowing how to help them. And I didn't always know what to do. A lot of what I learned has been in trial and error. But, knowing what the policies are, knowing out here, like, what reintegration is really, we talk about reentry, and I'm not going to go into the system part, but just understanding that, like, as a nurse who's done case management, who's done discharge planning, it starts from the very beginning. So really taking a look, like, what is it going to look like for me to be able to maintain, right, my relationship with my loved one, like, successfully, right? First, I always say self-care. I got to take care of myself. I'm not any good to anybody if I don't take care of myself, whether that's physically, spiritually, got to keep my health up, whatever that looks like. Got to take care of yourself first. Of course, you got to maintain your communication. You have to have a support system. You have to have a support system. There are a lot of us. There's 2.3 million people incarcerated. Trust me, there's 1 in 2 people who have an immediate family member who are incarcerated. You know somebody. You know somebody who's had a loved one who's incarcerated. Find a positive support system because you're going to need it. I didn't even know that I needed it. Sometimes you need somebody to talk to. I don't know. Sometimes I need somebody to just be able to relate to. When I can't find that in my community, which is highly unlikely, you may need some counseling, and that's okay. Like, there's a stigma behind it, but you may need to talk to somebody, to talk to a professional. That's okay, because your loved one's dealing with the trauma of incarceration, and you are as well, right? And in that, you're dealing with a space and time, right, where you have this loved one who's here, but they're not here. And so I researched a lot about, like, just having a parent who's incarcerated and then siblings. And, I even found that research shows that children who have incarcerated parents are more traumatized at times than children who go through divorce or go through the death of a parent, because of, I think there's almost a lack of, like, finality, right? Because they're out of reach almost. And that's provided that their family and their loved ones take them to see their parent, their incarcerated parent. So I think sometimes we undermine the actual trauma that happens with the absence of our loved one. And in that, we fail to see, like, appropriate interventions, no matter what that looks like. If you need healthcare, whatever you need, you got to take care of yourself so that you're able to take care of your loved one, because you can't pour into anybody else if you're empty.
Well, I thank you. I thank you for your time today. I look forward to our next interview when I'm able to share with the people exactly all that you do to help the incarcerated, the newly returning citizens, as well as families, and as well as what you're doing concerning state lawmakers. So I thank you again for your time.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity, Sean. Great to talk
Normally,
to
I
you.
would give a scripture right now, but this particular topic is so close to my heart. The key thing that Savannah stated was at the beginning when her son, and as she continued to reveal, other relatives were serving time. She was not in a situation or a set of circumstances where she could pour out and give what she is doing now. She learned, but the key thing that I would like to share is that if you have a relative who is incarcerated, to a certain extent, that can be traumatic, not only on them, but on you. And Savannah gave us a clear answer on if you have relatives or a relative who is incarcerated, or you have been incarcerated and you want to help others who are incarcerated. The key is you must become all that God intended for you to become, because other people get the overflow. Whenever you're giving, and no one's pouring in, or whenever you're pouring out, and you're not getting back, that becomes dead. For those of you who know the sea, it's called the Dead Sea because water comes in, but nothing goes out. Any relationship where all you're doing is all the giving, that relationship is going to die. As one who served over 27 years behind bars, we are able to give. We are able to write letters. We are able to make phone calls. And if we cannot make phone calls by payment, they do offer free phone calls every 90 days. And I'm asking you that if you are someone who has experienced some of the things that Savannah experienced, please take care of you. And out of taking care of you, you will be able to bless, whether it be monetary, whether it be with your time, whether it be with your prayers. You will be able to bless those behind the walls, because believe you me, I've talked to men for decades. And one thing that all of us wanted was for our families to be okay. My mother went through trauma the first 10 years that I was incarcerated, to the point where she just went to work and came home. And when I brought it to her attention, I said, Mama, maybe you had me in the place that God is supposed to be in your life. I said it very respectfully. And I asked her to pick back up her relationship with God. And she did. And things became better. But this subject right here, if you are facing circumstances that you know you cannot handle alone, I encourage you to reach out to some other individuals who understand your circumstances, because you're not in this alone. And believe you me, your relatives who are incarcerated, there are men, and if it's in a women's prison or women's jail or women's substance abuse house, there are people there to help them. That does not mean they don't need your help. That did not mean I didn't need the help of my family. But to a certain extent, sometimes we try to do things in people's lives that only God can. And so I'm asking you, are you doing anything in your relatives' lives who are incarcerated that only God can? And my other question is, what is God doing in your life so that you're able to give, and give without it destroying you? Have a great day.